Recreators poses a terrifying question. What if the characters we created came to life and found out they were creations? For example, what if Aisu materialized in front of me and realized I made her as basically a crystallization of what I find attractive in anime girls? How would she react to discovering she was invented almost entirely so I can have an anime girl of my own to fawn over? Is this line of inquiry somehow even more depressing than just whacking it to whatever large-chested, high-pitched strumpet is parading up and down this season's latest wretched fan service-laden piece of garbage? Hello there, I'm a pathetic loser, but I'm also Aaox, and this is my review of Recreators by Studio Troika. Troika's a relatively new studio headed up by Fate Zero director Aaox that's sort of bumbled its way around a couple of projects that I hesitate to call anything more than sort of pretty alright, I guess. And it's for that reason and others that I wasn't chomping at the bit to watch their latest opus in the same way one might not be chomping at the bit to grab a Big Mac after watching someone suffer a dramatic heart attack. That's right, coming from the studio that brought you Sad Kids and Robots Kill Each Other whilst Mika Kobayashi vocalizes loudly in the distance comes Angry Cartoon Characters Kill Each Other whilst Mika Kobayashi vocalizes loudly in the distance. They also made that show about the woman who loves bones. It's probably a joke in there somewhere, but I'm not saying it. With my interest in Troika's projects not exactly galactic then, it's fair to say I needed some coaxing to watch Recreators, and a certain composer being attached to the project turned out to be just the push I needed, because I'll try any flavor of ice cream as long as it's in a waffle cone. Yes, it's everyone's favorite music guy, Hiroyuki Sawano. Hooray! Excellent, it's very loud, the music is very loud, could you perhaps turn it down? Turn the music down, please! It's a common complaint regarding Sawano's music that he makes the same 3 songs over and over again, like he's got some kind of Memento-style amnesia, and that's not an unfounded accusation. My opinion, though, for what it's worth, is that it's okay to make the same 3 pieces of music over and over again, provided they're fucking orgasmic. Yes, Sawano's various scores have a tendency to sort of melt into one another like a bunch of orchestral marshmallows in the acoustic microwave, and every soundtrack he works on has that one specific song he does on it. The one where Miss Kobayashi yells a lot, but which one am I talking about? Before Your Body Is Dry? MK Allies? Alu? Imniam-McCork open parenthesis SM1_final #2 close parenthesis. It's a real song name, by the way. I don't know if you follow Sawano's music, but all his songs are written using language that's like a halfway between Leetspeak and the Enigma code. I'm not kidding either. Look at his website. There's like an 11-year-old who just discovered that if you squint, the $ looks a little bit like the letter S. That said, the scene that sold me on Recreators worked by and large due to his score, and really the whole shebang is effectively and substantially improved by having that familiar dramatic orchestral blaring that's come to typify the latest edition of Now That's What I Call Sawano. Because I will be damned if that crescendo doesn't always completely blow me away, whether we're nuking New Orleans or being a terrible protagonist and ruining what was an otherwise very promising show, Guilty Crown. It's certainly a good thing then that Recreators isn't bogged down with a terrible protagonist of its own. Bugger. The particular nuisance we're burdened with this time is Sota, who's a wannabe light novel author. One evening he's settling down to watch the Monster Girl Quest OVA when all of a sudden his iPad starts flipping out and sucks him into the world of the anime he's watching, which, I know, before you even say anything, oh look, Aaox is reviewing another isekai show, what a surprise, but that's not true. It's not true. I promise. It turns out that instead of our generic high school protagonist being sucked into a fantasy world where he's the best at everything and he has to install a ticker to keep track of how many girls are lining up to suck his dick, in Recreators the cartoon people get transported into the real world in a unique, exciting plot twist not seen since that 3D Simpsons episode or fucking Sonic X. You guys want to watch an episode? I think I have the old GBA video cartridge around here somewhere. Come join me. Join me, child. On the fucking screen! Watching an episode of Sonic X! Oh, what fun. Several other characters get pulled into the real world as well by our antagonist, who decides she wants to destroy every world in existence because her mum died, and she's having a little bit of a temper tantrum, how it is. It's classic literature, really. I mean, what is the Iliad if not Achilles throwing one huge hissy fit? Some of them side with Miss Military Uniform Princess, and the sensible ones side with Sota and Silesia to stop her. It all gets a bit fangled and confusing because nobody quite knows what's going on for like 2/3 of the entire run of the show. Speaking of Military Princess, I feel like I've seen her before. Wait a minute. No, it can't be. That's a clever show, though, when it's not being completely stupid, so really the main question is, what's that good ratio? Recreators is sort of a middle ground between Fate Stay Night and Toy Story, where the characters all learn, after coming into the real world, that their worlds and all the trials and pain they've been through in their respective source material are just stories written for entertainment, and that understandably makes a lot of them rather upset. Imagine finding out your whole life was porn. Now imagine finding out your whole life was porn written by this guy. I have 2 main criticisms of this show. The first is that they spend too much time dwelling on the creators and nowhere near enough time actually showing us their creations punching one another in the face, and when they do, it's never decisively resolved. And the other is that it doesn't really have much of a through line beyond stop military princess and save the world, and the steps getting there are never made particularly clear. Fundamentally, the goal is to prevent an overload of complexity that would occur due to the influx of characters into our world, like letting a few too many fat kids get into the lifeboat, but Meteora sort of just makes that up, and everyone just assumes that's exactly what's going on, but the show never really dwells on it again, which is a leap of logic that, as big of a fan I am of Occam's razor, felt more like a decapitation than a close shave. It definitely could have and should have been delivered in a way more subtle than just drawing us in close and conspiratorially whispering, "Oh, and also this is what our plan is." But in a show whose antagonist waddles around with a smug smile on her face giggling about the things she knows that we don't, that's perhaps to be expected, even if I wouldn't call it acceptable exactly. Conversely, something that I never really expected to see in a show like this is that the characters all feel believable and smartly written for the most part. Some of them more than others. Okay, maybe like 4 are smartly written, it's something. Alice Terrier, for example, is a tertiary antagonist, and she's one of the more interesting characters in the show because despite being very annoying and angry, she comes from a horrible berserk-type world, and her confusion and pain upon finding out it was all just a story is very understandable. She acts recklessly and violently, whilst laboring under a misapprehension that Meteora is a villain because someone whose defining trait is that they're a liar told her that she was, and that's very frustrating, but you can't fault her for it because her situation is utterly heartbreaking and almost relatable. And then we have magical girl Marmika, who's perhaps the most interesting character in the anime. As a magical girl, she comes from a world where most problems are solved through talking, and her magic never really hurts anyone, because that's what a magical girl show is. So when she asks people to stop fighting in the real world, and they refuse because real life is more complicated than children's television, and then she uses her magic on her opponents and they nearly die and cough up blood because everyone in anime has chronic bronchitis apparently, we get that good panning shot of how much devastation she's wrought, and she's terrified because that's not how things are supposed to work. The intentional jarring juxtaposition between seeing these cute love hearts pop into existence with a cartoonish and gently drift into you before breaking your legs and exploding is marvelously intelligent storytelling. She's living the life of a magical girl in a world that is too complicated for magical girls to exist in. I was sure she was going to embody that cute girl who's actually a hidden sadistic psychopath trope, but she's really just an incredibly pleasant character who only wants to do what's right, and in a plot as confusing as this one, she struggles to cope, and you feel how that affects her. Again, it's smart. It can be very clever, and even when the writing takes a turn for the cliche, can you really criticize it when the characters on screen are themselves supposed to be cliches? Well, yes, demonstrably so, but there's still a lot going for recreators, especially because halfway through they don't take 5 episodes to drag the show's forward momentum out behind the bike racks and shoot it in, "Oh wait, sorry, I got that wrong." They do. That's something they do. Why did they do that? But that's just the curse of the 2-core program, and I certainly don't need to harp on pacing anymore for at least a few more years, so let's harp on Military Princess instead. She's so enigmatic and aloof that it's hard to really understand her motivation until well past the point where she might be sympathetic. I mean, Mystique is good for a certain amount of time, but if you keep pulling the carpet out from under me, eventually I'm just gonna go for Lino. Other characters include the aforementioned murderous liar, Magane Chikujoin, whom, despite wearing really good thigh highs, is utterly despicable and almost certainly is a better villain than the actual real main villain of the show. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, honestly. Then there's Peppy Gundam Kid, a Kamina cosplayer and his pet Ghost, Blitz Grizzled Cop, Meteora, and my favorite character, Sexy Meteora. It's a fun enough cast and certain personalities bounce off each other well, and several of the conflicts are resolved in believable ways, with characters actually taking the time to talk to one another instead of whacking each other with increasingly large sticks, which was something that Noah eschewed in the favor of pointless murdering. Another point in Recreator's favor is that they actually take Sota and shuffle him off into a corner for half of the runtime, almost as if they're embarrassed by him. Seriously, like 4 episodes have him just stuck up on the top level of a stadium doing nothing, and even when he's not up there out of the way, the show barely acknowledges his existence beyond where he's plot critical, and that shows a surprising level of restraint that certain other shows didn't quite manage to get the hang of, if you catch my drift, Guilty Crown. The few instances where Sota does take center stage, however, are bizarrely compelling. He's not a hero, Zero, and he doesn't do anything overly dramatic. He's not the best Gundam pilot or the recipient of the overbearing lust of everything with a vagina within a 50-mile radius. He's tangentially related to the plot and is treated accordingly. For a few episodes, it's hinted that Sota knows who Military Princess's creator is, and yet he steadfastly refuses to tell his allies this critical information, and I found that immensely frustrating, only for the reasons for his doing so to feel frighteningly understandable. Sota's arc is one of an immensely relatable nature. Jealousy of those who are more popular than you, whose works surpass your own, about the trials of working in a competitive medium and how when certain people fall from grace, as much as you like them, you do on some level enjoy the fact they've been taken down a peg because it feels like you're closer to them. I joked earlier about how Sota's inclusion was a misstep, but I actually think that as cliche as his inclusion was, he actually ended up being the glue that kept the show together long enough for me to want to see it to the end. For a high school kid protagonist outside of his element, that's saying something. I don't know. I felt the realness of what he felt. That spoke to me, and that's basically what we watch this stuff for. What drama is here feels earned, for the most part. And I'm not going to praise Recreators above its station, but for a stupid show about fictional characters coming to life and smacking each other about the head, there was a lot more to Recreators than I expected going in. So yeah, watch Fate Zero. Yeah, gotcha. There's a little switcheroo at the end. But when you're done with that, go ahead and watch Recreators. Play me out, Sawano.
Hey everybody, my name is Sharktooth Bugs.